When he discovers that all the youngsters in his village have been captured by the monstrous Santa Claus, a boy and his father must fight off a horde of evil elves to save them. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale, from 2010. It's only 24 days until Christmas and Mr. Green reveals to his boss that he has found samples of sawdust almost 400 meters deep in the mountain he and his colleagues are drilling. Logically, such a discovery would be impossible, but Riley explains that those wooden remains were used to house someone's body and that mountain is actually just a large icebox that was built to store something very important. Encouraged by this breakthrough in the search he has been carrying out for the last few years, Riley decides to go out to follow the work of the diggers and gathers them all together to make an announcement. The group is in one of the mountains of Lapland, where, historically, it was said that Santa Claus lived. During his speech, Riley says that his childhood dream is about to come true. He then reveals that this is Santa's sacred tomb and that mountain was built to be his grave. Finally, the businessman says that his employees only have 24 days to open the mountain that took years to build, because he intends to loot the tomb by Christmas. What neither of these men realize is that there are two children hiding nearby. When he discovers that the man is planning to use dynamite to blow up the mountain, Yuso flees quickly and is followed by his friend. Pitari was very disappointed to discover that that mountain is where Santa Claus was buried, because that means he perished. When he returns home, the boy starts reading old books that tell the truth about the origin of Santa Claus and discovers that the old man wasn't as good as he thought. 3 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, Rauno gathers some pointed wooden sticks to build a hunting trap and uses a pig's head as bait. He then throws some snowballs at Pitari's bedroom window to wake him up. Before leaving the house, the boy looks outside and spots some footprints in the snow, which leaves him completely stunned. According to the information in the books, those marks belong to Santa Claus, so the boy runs to talk to his father and enters the fridge where he works. While Roma dismembers the pig, the boy closes his eyes to avoid seeing this scene and asks if the footprints he saw under his window belonged to his father. The man then says that he didn't walk there and asks the boy to change, because they have to go out reindeer hunting. When he arrives at the camp, Pitari meets Yuso again and tells him that Santa Claus was spying on his house last night. Just then, the first reindeer appear and Piiparainen celebrates the fact that his fridge will soon be full of meat. However, contrary to expectations, only 2 animals approach the site and the group begins to wonder what happened to the rest of the herd. When he looks at the mountain, Rauno comes to the conclusion that the diggers are involved in the disappearance of the reindeer. So the man decides to go there to investigate and is followed by Yuso and Piiparainen. As they approach the border, they find dozens of lifeless reindeer and Rauno asks Yuso to stay there with his son while he and Piiparainen go after those responsible for the chaos. As they approach the security fence, the pair meet Amo and they find the hole that the boys made with the help of pliers. Yuso then threatens Pitari so that the boy doesn't tell them that they cut the fence and says that the adults must never know that they were both on the mountain. Seeing that hole, Rauno believes that, in revenge for the invasion, the Russians who were drilling into the mountain decided to eliminate the reindeer. While the adults calculate the damage they have done, Pitari decides to take a closer look at the bodies of those animals and is terrified to find the same footprints he saw earlier under his bedroom window. Furious, Rauno takes a drastic decision and uses his shotgun to open the gate. The group then invades the restricted area and climbs to the top of the mountain in their vehicles. However, when they enter the shelter, they discover that Riley and his men have already left and Piiparainen manages to turn on the lights to investigate the place. At that moment, he finds the hole that the diggers have made and calls his friends to see the truth. Riley got the license to use explosives on that mountain under the pretext that he was doing seismic research, but now the locals know that the Russians were digging for something. In an attempt to find out how deep the hole is, Rauno throws a flare inside and realizes that the pit is bigger than he thought. This means that something very big has been taken from there. Frustrated, the residents return to their homes and Rauno prepares dinner while Yuso and Pitari are in the bedroom. The boy advises his friend to protect himself, as he believes that Santa Claus is nearby and could attack at any moment. Upon hearing the boy's theory, Yuso starts to make fun of him, so Pitari shows him some pages from the book he's read and reveals that the real Santa Claus is very different from the good old man in the stories adults tell. The boy reveals that, many years ago, his ancestors were furious with Santa Claus because he captured children. Then a group decided to lure him to a frozen lake and, when the old man arrived, the ice broke with him. After falling into the water, Santa's body was frozen. Then, months later, during the summer, the locals pulled a huge block of ice out of the lake and hid the old man inside the mountain. After telling this story, Pitari tries to convince his friend to tell the others that they were the ones who made that hole in the fence, but Yuso is unwilling to face the consequences of his actions. When the boy leaves, Pitari and his father get together to eat gingerbread cookies, and Rauno has to hold back his tears so that his son doesn't see him crying. After eating his cookies, the boy goes to his room and spends the whole night sitting in front of the window to make sure Santa doesn't invade his room. That morning, Mr. Green tries to get in touch with the company he works for and tells them that they need to cancel the operation, because what is buried in that mountain is not what Riley imagined. Suddenly, the man hears the screams of the other members of his team and realizes that they are being attacked by a humanoid creature. In the morning, while trying to light the fire, Rauno is surprised by something moving inside the fireplace, and Pitari wakes up to his father's screams. With his rifle in hand, the boy quickly goes downstairs and prepares to shoot, but Rauno finds a trap inside the fireplace and accuses his son of having put the hunting equipment there. Minutes later, when he leaves the house, Pitari realizes that the pig's head has disappeared and calls his father to check the trap. As he gets closer, Rauno finds some white feathers on the spot, but when he looks inside the hole, he sees a human hand and takes his son inside. Curious, the boy asks to see what's inside the hole, but his father says it was a bird that stole the bait. While Pitari is having breakfast, Piiparainen appears dressed as Santa Claus, and Rauno asks for his help to get rid of the body. Together, they drag the body to the fridge and check in his passport that he is American. They then come to the conclusion that the bearded old man is one of the homeless people living on the mountain. The two men then begin to think of ways to get rid of that body, because if Brian is a beggar, no one will miss him. Looking at the equipment he uses to cut up the animals that end up in his fridge, Rauno decides to use it to dismember the old man's body, and Piiparainen offers to help. Meanwhile, Pitari decides to take a look in the hole and spots a bag of potatoes inside. On opening the bag, the boy comes across a wooden doll and decides to snoop around what his father is doing in the fridge. Just as Rauno is about to start slicing Brian's body, the old man pulls his arm back and Piiparainen realizes that he is breathing. Suddenly, the man starts sniffing and looks towards the window where Pitari is. Noticing that he has been discovered, the boy runs off into the forest and his father goes after him. Meanwhile, Piiparainen stays behind to keep Brian company. When he meets his son, the man realizes that he is getting into a police car and is afraid of what the boy might say to the officer. So he decides to follow the vehicle and discovers that the sheriff was on his way to Amo's house. The man reveals that there were 200 sacks of potatoes in his warehouse. However, the place was broken into during the night and, for some mysterious reason, only the sacks were taken. The sheriff then reveals that, the night before, almost all the houses in the village had their heaters stolen, and, just then, Pitari goes to pay a visit to his friend, who is still asleep. However, when the boy enters Yuso's room, he discovers that he isn't there. Instead, a wooden doll identical to the one he found in the trap has been left in the boy's place. Immediately, Pitari goes to tell the sheriff that Yuso has been captured, but he says that the boy must have run away to meet some girl. When the sheriff leaves, Rauno tells Amo what has happened and asks for his help to communicate with Brian, as he is one of the few people in the village who can speak English. While he's alone with the old man, Piiparainen approaches with a gingerbread cookie in his hands and notices that Brian has started sniffing again. Suddenly, the old man tries to say something and Piiparainen comes closer to try to hear him. At that moment, he is attacked. When Rauno and Amo arrive home, they find Piiparainen bleeding and ask what happened. The man then reveals that he was bitten by the old man and claims that he is not human. Furious, Amo bursts into the fridge ready to shoot anything that moves, but when he enters, the three men find Brian cowering on the floor. Carefully, Amo approaches and tries to communicate with the old man, but he doesn't respond. Then Rauno grabs a broomstick and starts poking Brian, while Amo points his shotgun at him. At that moment, Pitari is calling all his friends' houses to find out if they're okay and discovers that the children haven't been seen by their parents since early this morning. Worried, the boy goes to talk to his father and reveals that all his friends have been captured. On hearing this, Rauno doesn't understand what his son is saying and Piiparainen asks him to come in to see something. When he smells the boy, the old man gets up and Rauno asks if Pitari knows him. At this point, the boy reveals that the old man knows all the children in the world and has been spying on the village for the last few days. Finally, Pitari says that is Santa Claus and he has gone there to capture him. According to the young man, that old man was dug up when the Russians excavated the mountain and Piiparainen believes him. The man claims that he always knew that Brian was not an ordinary human, but a cursed creature. Suddenly, the old man begins to stare at Pitari and walks towards him. Frightened, the boy hides behind his father and Amo shoots the old man. Rauno and his friends then use chains to tie him up and eat cookies while they think about what to do with that monster. Suddenly, the group heard a noise coming from a radio set and discovered that the jacket belonged to one of the diggers. This means that Brian is the name of one of the men the creature eliminated, and Amo is informed that a search party is coming to the mountain to rob Santa's tomb. At this point, Rauno has an idea and reveals that he is with the man they are looking for, but asks for a large sum of money in exchange for him. So the group arranges a rendezvous with Riley and takes Santa trapped inside a cage. Even in his cage, the man is still obsessed with Pitari, and the boy gets goosebumps every time he looks at him. When they arrive at the agreed location, the three men get out of the car and Rauno orders his son to stay in the truck while they negotiate. Minutes later, a helicopter appears and, after landing on the ground, Riley gets out of the aircraft. At that moment, the man asks what they want in exchange for the old man, and Amo asks for $85,000, which is the value of the loss they suffered as a result of the reindeer's eliminations. Before closing the deal, Riley asks to see Santa Claus, and the men take the cage to him. While the entrepreneur checks his merchandise, Pitari gets out of the truck and walks towards a warehouse. When he looks into the old man's eyes, Riley is almost spellbound by him, but he manages to look away in time and instructs the Finns to remain silent so as not to be discovered. He then reveals that this is not Santa Claus, but one of his helper elves. When he hears this, Rauno loses patience, believing that he is being tricked, and orders the businessman to deliver the money to them immediately. While they are arguing, suddenly the lights go out and Riley says that it will now be up to Santa Claus to decide who should live or be eliminated. Just then, they hear the helicopter pilot scream, but they can't see what's happened to him. Terrified, the three friends stand with their backs to each other and prepare to shoot. Then they see countless elves surrounding the place. Suddenly, Riley is axed in the head and Rauno runs to the truck looking for Pitari. Realizing that his son has entered the shed, the man goes after him and is followed by Amo and Piiparainen. Looking at the enormous structure that has been built inside, the boy comes to the conclusion that the elves are preparing a nest for their master in an attempt to thaw him out. Just then, they hear the screams of the children who have been captured, and Amo rushes to free them, as they are all trapped inside the potato sacks. Piiparainen then starts destroying the heaters that are being used to melt the ice while Rauno tries to hold the door. Seeing the despair of his friends and family, Pitari begins to think of a way to escape and says that as long as Santa Claus is alive, the children are in danger. So the boy suggests that they blow up the shed, but for this plan to work, someone will have to go outside and steal the helicopter. As he is the only one who knows how to fly, Piiparainen is put in charge of this mission and uses Christmas cookies as bait to distract the elves. After entering the aircraft, he starts the takeoff and Pitari orders the adults to gather all the children in a giant net so that Piiparainen can pull them out. While the youngsters are being taken far away, Amo and Rauno are drilling strategic holes in that huge ice rock to insert the dynamites and blow up Santa Claus. When he looks down and sees that the horde of elves is after them, Pitari realizes that his plan is working and uses the radio communicator to give the coordinates to Piiparainen. The boy's idea is to treat these creatures like reindeer and lead them to the corral, using the children as bait to attract them. A few minutes later, Rauno and Amo manage to finish the job and cover the ice mountain with explosives. The two men then use a chainsaw to cut off the horns and take them back to the truck. When they reach their final destination, Pitari notices that the gate to the corral is closed and decides to go down to open it, because only then will they be able to imprison all the elves. Even after Piiparainen forbids him to climb down, the boy jumps out of the net and manages to grab onto the power cables. After climbing down from the tower, he opens the gate and sees dozens of monsters running towards him. Knowing that he won't survive, the boy contacts Piiparainen for the last time and asks the man to tell his father that he perished a hero. At that moment, the two men have just left the warehouse and, while Amo drives away, Rauno presses the button to detonate the dynamites. When they realize that Santa Claus has been eliminated, the elves stop their attack and give up on capturing Pitari, as they have just lost their jobs. Relieved, the boy gives thanks for this Christmas miracle and asks Piiparainen to take the children home. After returning the youngsters to their parents, the man accompanies his friends to the corral to rescue Pitari, and everyone is impressed by what he has been able to do. As well as saving all the children, the young man has managed to collect dozens of elves which, once sold, will make Rauno and all the villagers rich. For the first time, the boy feels that he has won his father's trust and is extremely happy to know that he has made him proud. A few days after capturing the elves, the three men decide to give them a bath and then try to reintroduce them to society. The first step to succeeding in this mission is to teach those old people that children are friends and must be protected. After several months of being taught to look after children instead of cooking, the elves begin to show progress and Rauno starts training them to deliver presents. At the end of the following year, the group began selling the elves, who had now taken over from Santa Claus and were being exported as rare species to various countries. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.